Josh appeared obsessed with collecting plastic, a behavior that puzzled everyone around him. However, those who had mocked him over the years came to regret their actions once they discovered the truth. For several years, Josh Freeman collected plastic, hoping it would eventually bring him a reward for his hard work. He faced many challenges and obstacles along the way, but he persevered and remembered the people he had helped. Josh often searched for plastic in a nearby parking lot where he had been collecting for 12 years. After losing his job at age 30, he relied on the plastic he gathered to survive. Unfortunately, the people in the small town where he lived were not very friendly. They would only give him food if they made fun of him. Despite these difficulties, Josh continued to collect plastic to make ends meet. Josh's coworkers would often laugh quietly when he wasn't looking, and Josh knew they were making fun of him because someone had said something mean about how he looked. Many of them didn't even try to hide the fact that they didn't like him. Sometimes, when he was near where they worked, they would say rude things to him, which would shock anyone who heard. They called him all kinds of names and even accused him of being a predator who wanted to harm one of them when they were alone. But that was far from true. Josh had a different reason for collecting trash, what his coworkers didn't know about it. He focused on his work and ignored their insults. If they knew about his past as a respected soldier, they might treat him differently. But instead of demanding respect, Josh just did his job and tried to ignore their mean comments. In every situation where Josh was mocked or insulted, he reminded himself of his purpose. The dreams and goals he set for himself were important to him. However, he wouldn't be able to do that if he allowed every rude Susie to get to him. He leaned against a tree as he pulled out a picture of a tiny home he dreamed of one day owning. He promised himself, "It'll be mine one day soon." The day would arrive. Josh tucked away the picture and continued to work. Winter in these parts was harsh and would be here in no time, so he had a lot to do in the last few weeks before it arrived. He'd always enjoyed winter, but now he wasn't a fan. As a homeless person, he was often exposed to the elements, including large quantities of snow. It also meant that his beloved plastic would be hard to come by. The colder months were often filled with hot beverages, so Josh was unable to get his hands on anything but coffee lids and certain takeaway containers. There was another aspect of winter Josh found difficult. Due to the small size of the town, he was forced to live in the nearby woods. Consequently, he struggled to make the trip because walking through thick layers of snow wasn't easy. The plastics Josh was looking for were usually in the city, and Josh tried to find them whenever he could. His life revolved around it. The importance of this was sometimes greater than the importance of eating or staying warm. Having that hope was the only thing he had, and he wasn't about to give up. How could a homeless person benefit from plastic? Can it possibly be worth anything? In Josh's case, it was the key to his future, and he was determined to see it through. For years, he tried to get a job. He tried to get off the streets and live the life he always imagined he would have, and this was his way of doing it. Since no one wanted to give him a chance, he had to do it himself. Because of that, he focused all of his energy on his task, and it seemed like he was doing well. But it was taking a lot longer than he hoped it would, and then one day, something happened that caught Josh completely off guard. He was busy going through the massive trash cans behind the diner when a young woman approached him. She gave him a sweet smile and offered him a hot beverage. Josh was stunned that the diner's newest hire was so friendly. He kind of expected her to be like everyone else. The woman introduced herself as Kara and asked if she could sit with Josh while she was on her lunch break. Josh was a little stunned, but he agreed to keep the lady company. She did just offer him a coffee after all, so it'd be rude to refuse. The two of them started talking, and before long, Kara pulled out a sandwich and offered the entire thing to Josh. He could hear her stomach rumbling and didn't want to take her food away, so he politely refused, but she insisted. Over the next few days, this had become a routine. Kara would spend each of her lunch breaks with Josh, and she would make sure that she always had something delicious for him to eat. Josh appreciated the company but felt really bad about taking her lunch and often insisted they share it. However, Kara simply told him she could eat when she got home, whereas he couldn't. At first, Josh thought it was a trick the employees came up with so they could mock him again. But after about a week, he realized Kara wasn't like those girls. She was just a caring young woman who grew up in a bad household, and she didn't want to see anyone else suffer. Kara was just trying to do her part. Josh was lucky that he met her when he did because everything was about to change. One day, while they were sitting together, Kara asked Josh why he was collecting all the plastic. Josh was very protective of his collection and avoided talking about it. But he did tell her that his plastic was very important to him. Instead of getting upset, Kara laughed and offered to bring him some plastic she had at home. Josh was thrilled and accepted her offer, but he didn't know how much she would help him. In the following days, Josh had been working faster, and with Kara's help, he had more plastic than he ever thought he'd get. If things continued this way, his dreams could come true soon, but he would always remember Kara for her kindness. One night, Josh sat and looked at the piles of trash bags around his tent. He estimated there were a lot of pounds of plastic, which was good, but not enough for his goal. He knew he needed more, and he calculated that another year of collecting would get him there. Josh would be lying if he said he wasn't excited. Even though it would take another year, he was closer to his goal than ever before, and that was something to be proud of. He'd survive a 12-month winter if it meant he'd finally be out of the situation he was in. But that night, something happened that would have Josh wishing he'd given up years ago. It was the middle of the night, and Josh had been woken up by noises outside. He got up and braced for the cold to see what was going on. But as soon as he looked at his pile of plastic, his heart shattered. It was gone. At least a third of the plastic he'd been collecting over the last years was stolen. When Kara arrived at work the next morning, she found Josh sitting on the sidewalk on the verge of tears. She ran over to him and asked what had happened. He told her he lost his precious plastic. His hopes and dreams had come crashing down, and he feared he'd be homeless forever. It was too much for her to handle, and she immediately jumped to work. Less than a week later, Kara and a bus full of people showed up at Josh's makeshift tent in the woods. They started unloading a truck they'd brought with them, and Josh just stared at them with big eyes. That was when Kara explained that she shared Josh's story. Online, and all those people agreed to help him collect plastic. They not only replaced what he'd lost, but also managed to gather a few pounds more. The joy in his eyes melted Kara's heart. Even though she never understood why his plastic was so important to him, she could tell that her gesture meant the world to him. Josh gave Kara a big hug and asked what she could do to return the favor, but she didn't want anything. Seeing him so happy was more than she could have ever asked for. Kara didn't fully understand Josh and his attachment to collecting plastic. The next day at work, she hoped to see Josh to discuss the online support they had received, but he wasn't there. She wasn't initially worried, thinking he might be running late, but he didn't show up that day or the next. As the week went on, Kara grew concerned since she hadn't seen Josh since she dropped off the plastic. She felt something was wrong and decided to search for him in the forest that night. To her surprise, Kara found that Josh and his plastic were gone. She couldn't sleep that night and arrived at work the next day in a bad mood. When she heard her colleagues gossiping about her relationship with Josh, she got angry. At first, she tried to politely ask them to stop, but when they insulted Josh, calling him disgusting, Kara couldn't hold back. She confronted them, defending Josh and criticizing them for treating a war hero poorly. The argument escalated and some colleagues admitted they had stolen Josh's plastic. Kara was furious, but was interrupted by the arrival of a sleek Maserati in the parking lot. Kara was unaware the surprise was in store for everyone, including her. A man got out of the car and Kara was surprised to see him. He straightened his suit and entered the diner. Although everyone was excited to see him, he insisted on Kara serving him. When she approached him, he asked her to sit down, and then it dawned on her. It was Josh, and he had come to offer her a job at his new fancy restaurant. Another coworker tried to steal the job, but Josh remembered how Kara had treated him well and offered her the job because of that.